I thought it might be helpful today. You can be seated. It's going to be a long stand if you. I thought it would be helpful today to take time to talk about some very difficult theology and perhaps even more difficult life experiences. In the Old Testament, we have 3 books that are referred to as the wisdom literature. They are the books of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. And you see in these 3 books a progression in theology that, for me, fits with those who say that as we grow in our cognitive skills, we likewise develop in our ways of thinking about and experiencing God. The book of Proverbs teaches us that God is wise and just, not to be questioned. He has ordered the world in such a way that it is fair. Right is right and wrong is wrong. The righteous are rewarded and the wicked are punished. Ecclesiastes is a book our parents could have written if they were like mine, and they told you when you complained about something that the world isn't always fair, right? The wicked don't always get what they deserve. Life is unpredictable and hard to comprehend. In Job, we get to wrestle with these 2 perspectives. Is God wise and just? Or is he off playing some cosmic game with the devil? Is God a God of compassion and grace? If so, then why do bad things happen to good people? It is said in the book of Job that somewhere in the heavenly realm, God was present along with creatures he referred to as the sons of God. It is said that he addressed all of them, kind of like the CEO at a company meeting, and brought up an exemplary human being named Job, who was upright and loyal, obedient and God-fearing. One of the creatures challenged God. In Hebrew, this creature is referred to as the Satan, a title which means the one who opposed. The one who opposed began questioning how God was running the world. He proposed that Job did not really love God, but only acted like it because of how God rewarded him. If God were to take away everything that he had given to Job, Satan said, then we would see Job's true colors. You know, a reasonable assumption. We might think the same about the super wealthy and privileged who wear their religion proudly. Sure, they live on easy street. They have no idea what it's like to really struggle. So God allowed this creature to roam the earth and to strip Job of all that was meaningful to him. Anything was permissible to God except to take Job's life. Take his livestock, his camels. Take his family, his health. But don't kill him. And so Satan does. At first, Job remains faithful and he praises God, but through his suffering, laying in an ash heap outside of the town where he once held prominence, covered in boils and worms, Job began to shake his fist at the sky, not cursing God, but questioning. Why me? Depressed and despondent, he curses the day he was born. He says in our reading today, my days have come to an end without hope. I shall not see happiness again. His friends arrived to offer to help him. They sat with him for 7 days of grieving, as is the Hebrew tradition. And then they opened their mouths. With friends like this, who needs enemies? Job, you must have done something to deserve this. We know the world is ordered by God's justice and fairness in such a way that it is the wicked who are punished. For 34 chapters in the book of Job, his friends tried to counsel him on the sins in his life, sins he must have committed. Do you have friends like that? Perhaps well-meaning but lacking any understanding of the hurt that they are causing, rubbing salt in Job's wounds by berating him. Even God said that Job was blameless, and there was nothing Job did to bring on this suffering. Nothing. And after each accusation, Job became more and more frustrated. I didn't cheat on my wife. I loved her. I didn't cheat on my taxes. I was always honest. I never slandered others. I didn't act uncharitable. I'm an honest and upright man. Job defended himself, but he also experienced an intense storm of emotions. By the end of Job's rant, he demanded that God come to him and explain himself. And so God does. Not by recounting the story of God's agreement with Satan, the opposer, but by placing Job's gaze on the whole of creation, the grandeur of the galaxies, and the wonderment of the creatures that inhabited creation. Each detail intricately designed. Even the hippopotamus and the crocodile, creatures who could devour Job, they too, perhaps like the creature that they called Satan, were not evil, but simply a part of God's design. He asked Job if he was capable of comprehending all that sustains creation. Can you do all this, Job? Do you have any idea how it is done? And that was it. That was God's defense. Job's perspective was that God was not just, he was suffering, and it simply wasn't fair. But God's perspective was infinitely bigger. God was dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexities when he made decisions. Understanding this, Job, who never learned why he suffered, was humbled. In the end, Job regained what he had lost tenfold. But more than that, he learned to hold all that he possessed loosely, knowing that bad things do happen to good people, and that either way, even in the face of great loss, he would be okay. What can we learn from this story? Here are a few thoughts. God desires honest conversations. Whether it is with this heavenly being who opposed God, or with Job who cried out in the midst of agony, God met them there. God is willing to hear from us, to let us wrestle with God, and to ride whatever emotional roller coaster we are on until we are ready to get off. God used a form of mindfulness to help Job pull back and see the bigger picture. Depression narrows our perspectives. All we can see is the pain that we feel and the cause that we attribute to that pain. Sometimes we too need to pull back and to recognize our situations within the larger scheme of things. Mindfulness lets us accept ambiguity, to be okay with mystery, like the dynamic interaction between creator and creation, to accept those things that we may never understand. It puts us in a state of simply being with what is. In redirecting Job's focus to creation, God gave Job a break from suffering. Depression exhausts us. We need to let the mind rest. to let the constant chatter in our brains go unpaused for a while. Depression drives us to want to know why, to create a narrative that fits how we are feeling, and one that fits our worldview. Job's theology limited him. We see in those 3 books of wisdom a progression from the concrete to the abstract, from black and white rules of justice as espoused by Job's friends who cast judgment on him, to an acceptance that the world is often disordered, complicated, and unfair. Job could not fit his life experiences into his long-held expectations for God and his belief that God rewarded faithfulness with prosperity. There was an incongruence that he wrestled with. Something had to change. And so his paradigm of faith shifted following that time of conversation with God, and Job's angst began to dissipate. I, like you, have had my share of heartaches. I call those kick-in-the-gut experiences. Deep betrayals, significant traumas, incredible losses. In my studies of the book of Job, I found 2 basic camps regarding the interpretation. Christian theologians proposed that Job was like Christ, the suffering servant who bore stripes he did not deserve because of some greater purpose set in motion by God and God's battle to overcome the stain of evil. And then there were Jewish theologians who saw a man who represents all men and women who, like the Hebrew nation, suffered simply because of who he was. And to Job's credit, according to some Jewish scholars, he pushed back. He even pushed back on God for what was a great injustice. In the Jewish tradition, Job is a book that teaches us to fight injustice. We who are so much more likely to stand on the margins with others who are suffering have a right and an obligation to advocate for ourselves when we are maligned, mistreated, and unfairly afflicted. It's okay. It is sometimes in the fight for our own dignity that we gain an ability to see and love ourselves as children of God. And we grow in our understanding of the complexities of the relationships and situations that impact us. May God give us peace in the midst of our darker days. Amen.
Amen.